Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of On the Clock. We got a lot to talk about today. Free agency is slowing down, and draft season is rising up right now. There's a lot to go over. But honestly, first and foremost, I'm joined by a good friend and great guest on the podcast today, Jacob Lintler. Jacob, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me today.
Awesome. I gotta say, the first thing I have to ask, and I was waiting to mention this. I didn't talk about this pre-show at all, but Justin Fields and Russell Wilson. How are you feeling about that? How are you feeling about the whole Kenny Pickett and Spears in general?
Yeah, I from an organizational standpoint, I really like bringing in new blood in the quarterback room. Kenny Pickett, just watching him, it didn't really seem like there was going to be much of a future there. So moving off of him was not expected at all. We expected the Russ thing kind of, but him getting traded was like whoa. And then my mind straight went to okay, we got one quarterback on the roster, Justin Fields time, and for a
So you
six.
thought that immediately.
I did. I got a ton of texts from my buddies where I'm like, wait a minute. Like, I don't know who else. We got to get two quarterbacks. One of them could easily be Justin Fields. And after I watched the Sam Howell trade to Seattle, where I truly thought Fields could go, I was like, he doesn't have a market. Go get him. And clearly he didn't have much of a market. So, yeah, I really like it. I like it a lot more than other people that are kind of confused with two maybe starters in the room. I think there's so much flexibility there for us. So, yeah, I'm a big fan.
My first reaction when they traded for Russell Wilson and they kind of announced he was a starter, so I was shook. I just thought it was a dumb trade. I said they should have traded for Fields. Then they went and actually traded for Fields. I'm still surprised they're saying Russell Wilson's the starter. They're going to end up giving Russell Wilson all the reps in the offseason, and like 5 weeks into the season, Fields is going to take over anyways. At least that's my guess. Like I don't see Russell Wilson ending the season as a starter unless Justin Fields comes in and either gets hurt or struggles himself. Like I see at a point in the season them pivoting to Justin Fields. So to kind of make Russell Wilson the starter, in my mind, just doesn't allow Justin Fields to acclimate himself to the system when I think the organization, hopefully, is kind of projecting him to be the starter anyway at a point in time.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would also, if I had to guess, say that Justin Fields will be starting for the Steelers at some point this year, and which I think like great contingency. The fact that we have Russell Wilson for a year, like 1.2 mil, and then Fields, we then get the option to see if I think even if Russell Wilson isn't bad, but like just isn't looking like he's going to be the guy, that they could just pivot to Fields and then see what they got for the last 6 weeks of the year, something like that, depending on where we are, if we're truly contenders or not. So I think that the way we structured it this offseason is very good. I love to see change. I love to see stuff that isn't the traditional Steelers, just sit on your hands and do nothing. And that's a product of our new GM, Omar Khan. So love it.
Yeah, and I also like the fit with Arthur Smith. Right? Arthur
Mm-hmm.
Smith liked that kind of like he didn't. I guess he kind of did fit Kenny Pickett a little bit, but he fits Justin Fields even more with just being able to utilize the run game and the rollout system. What's your guess? What week do Steelers fans begin to chant Justin Fields' name in the stadium?
Oh boy. Oh, that's tough. I'd have to look at a schedule, but if I just had to take a blind guess, oh, Steelers fans, it could be early. It could be real
I'm
early.
saying the Broncos fans got rid of Russ or started yelling to get rid of Russ. I think like the first or second week,
Yeah,
and
it could
that
be
was after trading for him. So I don't know.
it, it could be real early. Yeah, I'll go maybe first 3-4 weeks. I mean, depending on the play. Like, but we just had to watch some Kenny Pickett football, so maybe there's a
Yeah,
little period of like, okay, at least this is a little bit better. But we'll see.
they were smart not saying anything crazy at the press conference. They didn't want to get everyone's hopes up too high. They
Yeah.
want to say, okay, we had Kenny Pickett last year. We're going to improve a little bit. Are there any other free agency moves you liked or honestly didn't like?
Um, Pittsburgh. Well, Pittsburgh or just in general.
In general, you could say Pittsburgh or any team.
Let's think. Free agency moves I didn't like, or actually, we'll go with did like. Just out of value, and if I was a Giants fan, at least it gives you something to watch games for. Brian Burns was cool. I think just knowing what they were asking for him last year at the deadline from the Rams, and then now seeing what they just had to give up to get him. I don't think it really matches the timeline is the problem, but maybe bringing a quarterback this year, and that's all of a sudden not so much of a problem, even though I don't think that they're going to be. I don't know. I really don't know if they're going to be in a quarterback position this year. But I think the Brian Burns deal was pretty solid. Outside of that, things I didn't like, Deontay Johnson. I could not believe the price that was so low that we got back in return for him. I could not believe that, especially with the way Omar Khan's. I mean, a sixth for Justin Fields, and we're getting a move up from from a seventh to a sixth for Deontay Johnson plus Dante Jackson, which Dante Jackson hopefully could be fine. Maybe they see something there, but I was shocked because I mean Deontay Johnson is an elite separator. Whether or not you really like his hands or other aspects, I definitely, especially from the Panthers, thought we could have gotten more from that. So I really did not like that move.
Yeah, it felt like a weird scenario where the Panthers have that need. So you would have thought they would have been upcharged, and the Steelers don't really have who's their receiver? Is Calvin Austin their receiver too? Who's their receiver 2 and 3 right now?
Well, they just signed so Pickens won, and then they just signed Van Jefferson. It's come on, it gets real shallow real quick.
Yeah, so I assume they'll target ones in the draft, but to get rid of your wide receiver 2 and not really get anything in return from a team that really needs a wide receiver, you'd expect them to get more. I also really like that Brian Burns move. I think he's young, so it's I guess you have him for the future, even if you're not you're not striving to be a playoff or contending team for another 2 years or even 3 years. He'll still feel that he's only 26, and I mean for the Panthers, it's just what are you doing? What? It makes me happy every day that I'm not a Panthers fan because I do not know how I could do it. And honestly, if I were the Giants right now, I would be full steam ahead trading up for Jaden Daniels. I think he fits the scheme perfectly. I think he's an upgrade over Daniel Jones in practically every way. I wanted them to go and get Anthony Richardson last season, and they did not. But if they traded up to 3 or 4 and got Jaden Daniels and they rolled out with Jaden Daniels and drafted a pass catcher in round 2, I don't think their offense is great, but they could have stuff to rebuild on, right? They have an infrastructure of Andrew Thomas, an infrastructure. Hopefully Evan Neal gets better with the new offensive line coach. They swing him to guard. They have pieces on defense, of course. And when you have a quarterback like that, you could kind of start to take that step or just have a direction. There's no direction for the team right now.
Yeah, exactly. It's now that the Texans have CJ Stroud, all of a sudden the doors are open. They were rocking Devin Singletary and Dameon Pierce last year. And even a pass catcher like Nico Collins ended up being awesome, blooming. But now it's all of a sudden oh, okay, here we go. We have our direction. We have our guy. Now we can expand on that. And I think the Giants had a pretty rough offseason when it just comes to losing key pieces that I don't know how they're going to fill in. But I don't think their goal really is to fill those in this coming year. Like you said, Brian Burns has a long time. It's crazy to me that he's only 26. It feels like he's been in the league for so long. FSU guy. But yeah, so I think quarterback maybe they move. I'm not really sure. I don't think it's ever great to bet on the next year's draft class. And I don't really know how that draft class is going to be quarterback wise, but I do think that if they found some direction there, they can patch together safety with McKinney going to Green Bay and all these other holes they now have running back. That kind of stuff. That stuff's much easier to patch than quarterback for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you said it yourself. The second they have CJ Stroud, you sign guys like Joe Mixon, Danielle Hunter, additional strong quality pieces, and those are all looked towards. That's aiding you in the direction you want to go in to be a contending playoff team. If the Giants were to sign those players now, it would just be meaningless. You're signing Joe Mixon and Danielle Hunter, and it's what are you doing? That doesn't really help you. That doesn't make you a much better team, and you're just going to get pushed in this mediocre, if even, roster, right? And then once you get a quarterback, if you don't think Jaden Daniels can be the guy, then you don't draft him. But if you like Jaden Daniels as a prospect, and you don't have to completely sell the farm because all the teams trading up to 3, if the Patriots aren't drafting a quarterback at 3, are much behind them. You got, the Raiders, Vikings, and Broncos are all 10 to 13, right? So those teams have to they can give up much less to move only up to 3, right? The Patriots can basically go out to 6 and still get a guy like Malik Neighbors or Joe Alt or something. So to go up and get Jaden Daniels, then you could start to add those pieces, and it really brings a direction. I also really like the Jets moves, Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses. You're fielding Aaron Rodgers on half a knee right now, so you kind of have Garrett Wilson. You pick another receiver in the draft, and that's a pretty stout roster to put in front of him.
Mike Williams.
Exactly.
There you go. That's a nice little. Yeah, I agree with you, and I don't think that necessarily those are moves that you'd like just always snap at, but they have to. Like
Yeah.
they had to. They had to go get
Do you have
him.
any targets? Do you have any targets for them at 10? Like who you think they're going to draft?
It's really interesting now, actually. It's very, very. I mean, they now almost have a luxury pick's not the word. If they were a different organization, I would say they could take a developmental tackle kind of guy. But Brock Bowers, honestly, is really on the board for me.
Yeah.
I think that or the other method I've seen a lot of little Jordan Love gifs flying around of them of them taking another quarterback, whether that be McCarthy or whatever. But yeah, I think that Brock Bowers is definitely in play now because now they don't necessarily have to pick that tackle.
I'll say if McCarthy goes before pick 10 and they take Bo Nix or Michael Penix, by the time Aaron Rodgers retires or leaves the Jets, Bo Nix and Michael Penix are basically going to be 30 already. Like you're not getting like those guys if they're not starting in year 1 or maybe year 2, you're starting them at like 26 years old. It makes no sense, and that's when you have to further develop them for the NFL game. But I agree. I really like Brock Bowers as the pick. I think he's awesome, and like him, Garrett Wilson, Mike Williams, Brees Hall coming back. That's like a fantastic offense. That's an offense that if Aaron Rodgers is 80 or 90% of what he was before the injury, I mean, that's a top 3-4 team in the AFC because that defense is already good, right? I like Robert Saleh. A lot of people don't, but yeah, like that's just an all around great offseason or a great free agency so far for the Jets. Are there any? I guess Brock Bowers is one of them. Are there any other draftable players you think stocks risen or any players who like every team got guards? Like I think all the guards are going to fall down the draft. Are there any players who you think are rising after free agency?
After free agency, I would say when we're talking like team specific,
Yeah.
I'm big, like I see tons of Steelers stuff, and I think that I still believe there's a real chance that Jackson Powers Johnson is fitting into some of these teams. I was seeing reports the other center that's really available right now, which a lot of teams are lacking at center, which is kind of interesting. But Connor Williams, the Dolphins center, is really struggling with some knee stuff, and I've seen potential retirement stuff come out. And even if that's even being talked about, I mean that's a pretty scary deal to bring in a guy like that on a big contract for a good amount of time. So I think that people have really gotten the chance to see how good this center is, and Jackson Powers Johnson. I think he'll continue to rise. And then as these pro days keep coming and people get to see more of this testing, I think that I really think that like these receivers and teams that are just finding holes in their roster, I think that these guys will continue to climb just based on where these holes are falling.
Yeah, I mean, we got an excellent chat here by David. Rumors of Brandon Ayuk to Pittsburgh. How valid in your eyes is that move? So I'm a Niners fan, and he's a Steelers fan. So I'll hear your take first, and I'll get a little upset, and then I'll respond. So how do you feel about those rumors?
That's a great question. First of all, second of all, when I think about timeline, I wouldn't be too mad at it. We have a clear hole at wide receiver. And when you revisit some of the past trades, when it comes to, because I would think a first round pick, honestly, at least maybe that may be a little strong. That depending on the person you talk to, but I would think a first round pick. And if you look at an AJ Brown trade, where you're flipping pick, I believe it was 18, 17 around that area, and they picked Traylon Burks to replace him. Didn't pan out. We got Stephon Diggs, Justin Jefferson. That one did pan out. So when we're looking at these, flipping these guys, Ayuk still has plenty of time. He looked really, really good. He did play in a scheme that was, very middle of the field, very he's an awesome receiver. He took full advantage of that. Purdy got it to him. Arthur Smith also loves middle of the field, so maybe that fits. But I would say I'm never really big on paying a lot for these guys, especially whenever the Steelers are usually really, really good at developing receivers. But do we have time to develop receivers? Is the question. With TJ Watt, hitting close to 30, Cameron Hayward's old, Minka's getting up there. Are we wanting to sit on our hands and really take time to develop a receiver next to our third-year George Pickens? I don't think so. I think proven talent would really succeed that in this timeline for the Steelers. So I would not mind the move, barring crazy compensation.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a Steelers fan, I think that's an awesome move. I think it complements Pickens as well. Pickens is like an outside, not yak. He is a contested catch receiver, even though he can do a lot of other things. And Brandon Ayuk's like a pure separator, crazy release, crazy route running. And like if you're giving up a first and a little bit extra, I don't think you're getting a receiver in the first who could do what Ayuk can. And I don't know the Steelers' financials so well, but if they could pay him, I think that's a valuable piece. And I think then you have your weapon set. Those two, decent running game and Freiermuth, that's pretty good. If Justin Fields or Russell Wilson can be a serviceable quarterback and somewhat above average, that's a playoff offense right there. And with that defense, you could really make some sort of dent. From the Niners side, I personally don't think Brandon Ayuk's going to get traded. I think it's the same thing Deebo Samuel did when he was telling everyone he was leaving. He was posting on Instagram. He was going to the club and holding up signs where he's like, I'm not returning to the Niners. And then he returned to the Niners. I think they're just trying to get paid as they should. Brandon Ayuk was a top 10 receiver in the NFL this year, in my opinion. And I think he's going to get paid. I don't think they trade him. And he really fits the Niners mentality so well, where that first year he was stuck in the second year, he was just stuck in the doghouse, right? Like everything he did was wrong. No one knew why he wasn't getting minutes. Kyle Shanahan was destroying him at every press conference. And then he comes back the year later and kind of not only develops into a great talent, but into one of the team's offensive leaders. Like press conferences, he's going up there, mentoring the younger guys, Danny Gray, right? He's a staple of this organization right now and fits everything that the Niners stand for. So yeah, if Brandon Ayuk is really saying, I don't want to be here and I must leave and I must get traded, you don't really have a choice at that point. But I think he's playing this game where he's just trying to pretend something and trying to get more money. And I think the Niners are honestly happy to pay it. I mean, like he's top 10. I think I think I would consider getting rid of Deebo Samuel before I got rid of Brandon Ayuk. That's just me.
I agree with that. I do, and that's contrary. A lot of people are still really big Debo people, which understandable. He's great and he's so electric and fun to watch and can really transform an offense there. But Ayuk, man, the separation. I got to watch Brandon Ayuk week 1 at Pittsburgh. That's all I needed to see.
Yeah.
Like he torched us badly, and so bring him back to Pittsburgh, and I'd love that for the Steelers for sure.
Yeah, so kind of pivoting a little bit just towards the draft. I don't know. We've kind of seen all the tape. The pro days are still here, but you watch the tape already. Senior Bowl, Combine, everything's there. So, who are the players right now that you're higher on the most, and honestly that you want to shout out for players that are getting slept on through draft analysts?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple guys that I'm still. Some of these are going to fall a lot in line with what other people agree with, but Quinion Mitchell truly is awesome, and I think just getting to watch him at the Senior Bowl was crazy. And anyone that can guard there with the one-on-ones is like, okay, like everyone stop what you're doing. Like this guy's locking up in a situation where no one can lock up. And so I'm continuing to be very high on him. I've started to like Terry and Arnold a bit more than I did just from the combo of his build. He feels like a Colts guy to me, where it's the height, weight, speed. Chris Ballard, like just absolute home run pick. That's what it feels like to me if he makes it there. Now, does he make it there? Oof, I don't know, but it sure helps. It would sure help the Colts if it went quarterback, wide receiver, wide receiver. So maybe he does. A lot of those guys are going to quote unquote fall, whether or not that's actually because they're falling. And then one of my favorite guys, just out of like fun to watch / I think it's going to be awesome / amazing story. Laiatu Latu is one of my draft crushes, to put it the best way. I love his technicality. I love what he can do with his hands. He has counters for everything. He's really made me like understand more and fall in love with pass rushing just from watching him. And especially like knowing his story and everything as well. It's very cool, but I really am high on him. And I think that whoever is getting him at whatever range he goes is really just a home run pick there. And then when we look at scheme specific guys, Byron Murphy is very interesting to me because he really is super scheme specific. And you look at him and I get a little bit of Kalijah Kancey like feeling with him, where it's just a little bit like, pass rush main. But he's really good at like leveraging, getting low. He gets lower than everyone else. His pass rush is really good from there, but he's going to have to be in a scheme next to a guy like Aleem McNeil in Detroit, except I think they already just brought in another D tackle. I forget who they went and got.
Reader.
Yeah, DJ Reader. What a get, by the way. What
Yeah,
a
that's also that in terms of free agency moves, that's my top three. I think he's fantastic, and those two and Hutchinson, and then like Pascal on the outside is ridiculous.
Yeah, that was a home run move. On free agency, real quick, I had one in my mind that I really didn't like, and it was DeAndre Swift to the Bears. They gave him I believe, a eight a year for 4, and I'm not a big DeAndre Swift guy. I'm, along with some common narratives, I think his vision is really poor, and I think that's a different player behind that O line and just in that scheme. So I just wanted to note that real quick because that was still on my
Yeah.
head.
Well, I mean, I think they did balance it out with the Keenan Allen for a fourth.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Love that. I mean, why not? You're bringing in Caleb Williams to the best, well, potentially, hopefully, not hopefully, but potentially Caleb Williams into the best situation that, I mean, when's the first overall pick had that good of a situation?
First
Ever?
overall, if we're talking like top 5, Trey Lance for sure to the Niners
Yeah.
was like the classic.
Yep.
First overall pick, it's been a while. I mean, Burrow didn't have it. Trevor Lawrence didn't have it. Bryce Young obviously didn't have it. I mean, to get the first overall pick, you usually have to suck, right? And the
Yep.
Bears weren't a great team, but they benefited from trading up for they weren't the worst team in the league. They traded up for that pick last year,
Mhm.
and then also made the team better. I don't know. Honestly, it might have been a while since a team had such a good situation. I think they either snag another tackle to replace Braxton Jones, or I've been mocking it consistently. If Rome Odunze doesn't get there, Brock Bowers at 9 to the Bears. I think you go all in on the offense right now. The defense honestly doesn't matter that much. You're not contending. You're like, you could field a serviceable defense. You could have a top even 10 defense. If Caleb Williams does not look like the man out there, the coach, the GM, offensive coordinator, everyone involved with play calling is getting fired. They have to go full offense, take an offensive tackle or Brock Bowers. I think if you go Brock Bowers in the first and then throw out like a Kingsley Suamatea or Jordan Morgan or someone like that in the second, you've hit a home run. So, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Shane Waldron now there in Chicago, and we know how he loves his heavy packages with tight ends. He brought in Gerald Everett, which I forgot about until like yesterday. So now it's Cole Kmet, Gerald Everett. I mean, potentially, I know they were rocking what Noah Fant. Who did they have? Was it Will Dissly?
Yeah.
Yeah, they were rocking a ton of. There's another guy too. I'm gonna forget his name, but they were rocking I think they were rock. Oh, Parkinson.
Yeah.
Parkinson.
Yeah.
Parkinson. Yeah, so they were rocking like 3 over in Seattle. And yeah, I mean, if they bring in Brock Bowers, man, but like you said, like they have to stage themselves for like this year. Like that's why I think there was never any question of Justin Fields returning and being the starter, is because I mean, that is polls saying I'm putting my job that Justin Fields is going to be increasingly better and just a whole new player, on this team. In this year, he can't plan ahead anymore if he wants to continue to have this job. So that's a great point.
I mean, I keep every mock draft I posted in the last like couple weeks just because, I mean, I really think you're drafting offense. They're obviously not going running back. Receivers, I don't think Rome Odunze gets there. If he does, I would take him. Right. And Keenan Allen isn't really with their plans for like 2026. Right. So that's pretty serviceable there. And then I keep mocking them Brock Bowers, and everyone's like, they have Cole Kmet, they have Gerald Everett, they have all these guys. And I'm like, if these players are stopping you from drafting Brock Bowers, and you don't think Brock Bowers is a top 15, 16 pick, because
yeah,
if you really think he's a difference maker, you even on 11 or 12 packages at any time, he's going to be on the field. You could line him up anywhere. You could line him up slot, inline. You could even put him on the perimeter once in a while. Like, he could do so much. And just as a pure pass catcher, he's such a better security blanket than Cole Kmet is. Or honestly, like he might even be a better security blanket than Rome Odunze is, even though I take Rome. So I think that's a beautiful selection there. And then another comment from David, I'll just put it up here. Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze, Brian Thomas Jr., steady top 4 currently. Who is your wide receiver 5? So I assume this is your wide receiver top 4 receivers. If not, what's your shakeup? And then who do you have after that?
Yeah. In that order is where I am currently. Thomas Jr. Yeah. AD Mitchell up there has risen a ton for me, and also depends on where he's landing. That really depends for me. But yeah, I would say that those are. I'd say AD Mitchell. I'll put him at 5, but honestly maybe interchangeable with Brian Thomas Jr. I'm not as high as a lot of people are on him. I think there's a lot there, and I think depending on what a team needs, honestly, as a fit for the Steelers at 20, if we wanted to pick a receiver, Brian Thomas Jr. is a nice little pick there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say AD Mitchell would be my 5 right now.
If the Steelers went ahead and drafted AD Mitchell, it would be hilarious because he's like a kind of carbon copy light version of George Pickens with like the consistency issues, but the great hands fluidity.
Mhm.
Honestly, his tape reminds me of Pickens a ton. I have similar, but my 5 right now is Ladd McConkey. And then I kind of have this group of 4 receivers tiered where it's McConkey, AD Mitchell, Ricky Pearsall, and Roman Wilson. And those are my next 4. So like a lot of guys fell, like Troy Franklin and Devontae Walker used to be leading that pack, and they're all the way down for me. I think all 4 of those guys, I think Mitchell's a little more traitsy and a little less consistent, but Pearsall, Roman Wilson, Ladd McConkey can all step in and impact an offense right away. They all separated. They all were fantastic at the Senior Bowl, right? The testing was pretty solid. Pearsall ran fantastic, and they've been rising this whole offseason, and there's no reason to think that if you draft him, I don't know, if like all these guys could be potential picks for the Panthers at pick 33 and go in the top 40, 50 picks. And I think they could all make a difference right away. And I think that the NFL has kind of realized that these pro-ready prospects doesn't also mean that they have a low ceiling. Like I think Ricky Pearsall ceiling might not be as high as a Brian Thomas's or Devontae Walker, but just because he is pro-ready doesn't mean he can't achieve that wide receiver 2, high wide receiver 2 level. So I have Ladd McConkey, and I think there's a lot of quality guys in the beginning of round 2.
Yeah, I agree with you. A bunch of those guys are Senior Bowl guys, and yeah, I think that just because I say like AD Mitchell will be my wide receiver 5, that's really mixing in a lot of the upside with a little bit of the floor, what we've already seen out of him with that experience. But yeah, I mean, immediately right after, I love the Ladd McConkey, the Pearsall for sure. And like you're saying, like we look at these guys because they're a little bit older, and Pearsall transferred Arizona State to Florida. But man, I mean, he will step in and be good. I don't really have any doubts about that. So even though he could be a wide receiver 6, 7 for me, I mean, I'd put him right there in line with, the AD Mitchell. And I just think that really points to how talented this wide receiver class really is.
Yeah. Where do you have Xavier Worthy ranked with those guys?
Yeah, I still have him a bit lower. The speed thing, like, I think it's so scheme specific. It was funny watching Mike McDaniel kind of stalk him today at the pro day, because you're just like, come on, like there's no way they do it again, which they may. But yeah, I have him. I think he's really talented. I think there are some clear things on film though that are definitely concerns. And I'm not going to let his confirmation of his elite speed like turn me away from all the things that I've been like, okay, there's a real concern there. And the size of the frame is a big one for me. So where he goes is going to be a big deal. That's the tough thing about rankings is we rank guys, but where they go is almost the essence of their impact.
Yeah. And I mean, look, that speed was faster than even I thought he was going to run. And that did boost him up in my rankings. When you come out at 165 pounds, the second you put on pads, you're going to be slowed down incredibly, and he's going to bulk up, right? I don't think his play speed is as close to his 40 time as other prospects are play as close to their 40 time. Like I think Keon Coleman's 40 time was very bad, but I think when he's running on pads, he's running that same speed. I think he carries his weight really, really well, and I think he's able to carry his pads without any disturbance at all, right? And I think when Xavier Worthy actually eats something and drinks some water and gets his weight up somewhat, right? I don't think he's going to run as fast, and I think he's going to be slowed down, and I think he's going to have more issues with that. And yeah, I agree. Like, I mean, look, like if the Chiefs go ahead and draft him at 32, who am I to say anything? Like, that's just a hilarious, fantastic fit where obviously everyone's going to be comparing him to Tyreek Hill, even though he's not. But the first bomb we see with Patrick Mahomes is going to be incredible. And again, like with the Dolphins, like I could see him going to the Dolphins, but with 5 weeks into the season, all the receivers are hurt. And all the Dolphins fans are complaining, maybe you don't take all these slender receivers who are, tear their hamstrings once a year. So, yeah, like I agree. I think he's so much speed, but I think the negatives might be too much to overcome. I don't see him doing anything when he has any physical contact on routes. I don't see him winning any contested catches. I see him having drop problems, and speed doesn't really make that go away at all. And his film showed that, and his 40 time was awesome. But when you're running against even Quinion Mitchell. But when you're running against L'Jarius Sneed and bigger corners, it's going to be an issue. And honestly, I guess this is a good segue I just thought of. But L'Jarius Sneed, what's your thoughts on him? I thought he was a Colt for sure. I thought he was 100%. They were going to go after him. Now the reports are saying that they don't want him. The reports are saying that they didn't even have contact with him. So what do you think about L'Jarius Sneed? Is there any team do you think he's going to end up with? Do you think he's going to end up back with the Chiefs?
Yeah, I mean, the Colts thing I was really, really sold on, just like you said you were. I mean, there was so much coming out from like almost pretty trusted people within the Colts thing that were like, it's a done deal. They're just trying to get the extension, all this. And then that really just got walked back, which is super surprising. At this point, I think he's a Chief. I think he's sticking around. At some point, when you're dwelling on the money like that, I think there could be something in his head that's like, we're trying to go for 3 here, and that could easily pull him back. Plus the cap changing, and then them really opening up. Mahomes taking the cut to, or I guess maybe a restructure to open up a lot of cap room. I believe there's $20-something million. I think that probably made enough room to where they could get something done. Like when I look at other teams, it would be the things I've heard are Colts, Titans. Titans have been that if we're talking free agency still, Calvin Ridley, I don't know how I feel about that. I think it's important. I think they're trying to really put their foot down. I believe new GM, first year GM, I believe.
Yeah. I mean, I think they got him last year.
Yeah. Middle season, I believe they fired their guy. Yeah. Which is probably a result of the AJ Brown trade, but that's for another time. But yeah, I don't know how I feel about their moves. It just feels like they may have been doing a little much there, but yeah, I've heard Titans, Colts. I wouldn't really support. I don't see the vision. Tennessee every year is so confusing to me. It's like they're just making all these like dart throw moves that are like, it'd be like if a team consistently made like the Brian Burns move, just they never had any direction really. It would be kind of like that. They confuse me every year. I don't know what they're doing.
Them and the Jaguars, free agency starts and they're just like, we want all the most average players who are okay. They'll start on our team. They won't flash much. We just want all those players, put them on a roster and hope something happens. And
I'm just glad you said Jaguars. Gabe Davis. Oh,
not even Gabe Davis. Like they just like they go for like tier 3, tier 4 defenders and like middle of the pack pass catchers, and they Trevor Lawrence out there, and they're like, we don't have any holes on the offense, and then they get blown out by all these good teams, and it makes no sense. Like I mean, I think Trent Baalke sucks as a Niners fan. I honestly am so happy he's as far away from California as possible. But I mean, I don't like he was bound to blow up this roster. I mean, they lucked into Trevor Lawrence. I think Trevor Lawrence is great. I just think he's going to get ruined by this team. You look at all the drops they had last season. You just look at the scheme. There's nothing explosive. And with the Titans as well, it's just like, what are you doing with this roster? Like, I like Will Levis. I think you give Will Levis a chance. I mean, Calvin really isn't going to do it for you.
Tony Pollard on that kind of deal when you already have a guy of the same archetype in Tajay Spears had me.
I mean, look, I think Tajay Spears, as much as I love Tajay Spears, and as much as if you look up my tweets for Tajay Spears, there was like 100 of them before the draft. He doesn't have a single ACL, and he's a smaller guy. So I think you need to pair him with another running back who could take more of the load. But again, I don't see what that's doing for you. You're going to trot out Tony Pollard and win maybe an extra game because of your additions, maybe an extra 2 games. That's not pushing your franchise in any way, and it doesn't fit any timeline. There's no timeline where you're looking 4 years down the line and you're saying, wow, that Calvin Ridley and that Tony Pollard signing really did a lot for us. Because I don't think they're even preparing. That's not going to help the development of Will Levis either. Hopefully they get Joe Alt. And I think if they have Joe Alt and Peter Skronsky, that's like a good kick-ass offensive line where you could really start putting stuff together there. But I don't really get that roster as well. And then, it's both of them. I mean, if you're an AFC South team, you're just having fun with the offseason right now.
Houston's got to be delighted because, I mean, man, they just seem – the fact that they landed their guy, I mean, Stroud's just – he's going to – I think they may run that they may run that division for a long, long time, especially with these other teams making the Tony Pollard thing's so perplexing to me because I think that Tajay was such a good little change of pace with a Derrick Henry kind of guy. But just bringing in another small guy who was super inefficient last year showed he can't, at least in my opinion, doesn't look like he can be like a bona fide running back one. Like, go give him a good, like lucrative deal it's like I just don't see the vision there. But hey, maybe we come back to this and I'm like, Tony Pollard was the guy that made them 7-10 instead of 5-12.
Yeah. And then you're doing what? I mean, it honestly makes no sense to me.
No sense.
I mean, just back to running backs. Just final question to wrap it up. Who do you think is the first running back to be taken? What team do you think might take the first running back, and where do you see them going? Because this running back position is not getting a lot of love. Not much is going on with that. But are there any guys that you like to be picked first, and any teams that you think could go and select them?
Yeah, my running back one, who I still think will go first, is Trey Benson, which a lot of people are not really in agreement with, but I really think Trey Benson, I think there's a lot to like with him. And I got to watch his contact balance every time I went to FSU games. And it was like, how is he still up? How is he still up? And then he would have this sneaky home run speed where he would just skirt away from people. He doesn't look fast on the field, really, when you're watching him, but he just sneaks away from people. And then he pulled up and ran a 4.39, which again, fast track over in Indianapolis at the combine. But a 4.39 is 4.39. You know, even if it wasn't fast, maybe it was 4.44, but even that, I'm like, okay, like that's significant enough speed at his size where I'm like, there's real upside there that if he can continue to fight through contact and stay low as he does, I really like what he brings to the table. Now for teams that would possibly draft him, that's tough. That's very tough. I'm trying to think of, I know that the Raiders, I mean, they have Zamir White. Who else are the Raiders rocking out with? I don't know if Amir Abdullah is probably still there. Amir Abdullah will be there for the next 50 years, but it's like maybe the Raiders, maybe a team like that. I'm not sure who'll make that jump. And where do I think he will go? I've kind of held this same mentality for a little bit that, I mean, a team's gonna like a guy at the back end of the second, maybe,
Agreed.
and maybe slide up and get him, but no one should go in the second. No one should go until the third value-wise, but a team's going to like a running back and make a move, in my mind, at the back end of the second.
Yeah, I agree. I think the team's going to jump. My pick is the Cowboys in the late second. I think
there you go.
With Tony Pollard, and I could see them going and getting the hometown kid, Jonathan Brooks from Texas, who him and Marshawn Lloyd are, mixed up for my top running back. But, I mean, I think Jonathan Brooks fits what they like well. I think if he comes back from the ACL tear, he's super explosive, super fun, and he gets to stay in Texas, which is always a plus. But yeah, that's all we got from today. Jacob, I really appreciate you coming on. You want to shout out maybe where the viewers can find you, any work you're putting out, and just anything you want to promote.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. You can find me at Lintner Media on Twitter and YouTube. I posted my first mock draft about a week and a half ago. I'm going to come out with another one probably at the end of this week. I'll probably end up with a couple more. But yeah, find me anywhere at Lintner Media. It was a joy. Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on today. It was fun to talk.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, okay, viewers, once again, we got a lot coming up on Toilets to Titles. So check out all the articles there. Join the Gilded, join the Patreon. And yeah, I mean, counting down, we got around a month till the draft. So lock in. We got mock drafts coming every week. If you want to join the community mock, go ahead and make a pick for your favorite team and talk football. And until next time, enjoy.